Imagine stepping into a prestigious new school, a place that promised dreams, success, and a bright future. But what if that dream quickly twisted into a nightmare? Lily, hopeful and full of promise, thought she was ready for any challenge, but nothing could have prepared her for the hostility awaiting her. Watch till the end to see her remarkable journey unfold, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Lily sat quietly, her heart racing, as she absorbed her new surroundings. The pristine, polished floors, immaculate desks, and towering windows of Elite Academy were beyond anything she'd known. Her father had saved for years, sacrificing to bring her here, to one of the country's top schools, believing it would open doors to dreams they had only imagined. She wanted to make him proud. Yet, a sense of unease crept into her thoughts as she looked around. The classroom was filled with students, each lost in their own world, yet Lily felt their eyes flicker toward her, sizing her up in silence. She reassured herself she was new here. A few glances were only natural. But the stares lingered, growing colder, turning the attention from curious to scrutinizing. It felt as though she was being silently judged, an outsider under invisible pressure. Suddenly, the bell rang, shattering the silence. A tall, stern-looking woman entered with a sharp, brisk stride. Her heels clicked against the floor, and her intense gaze swept across the class, silencing every whisper. "Good morning, everyone," she announced, her voice commanding immediate respect. "I am Miss Harris, your biology teacher. Let's get started with a few announcements." Miss Harris paused, letting her words hang in the air before glancing down at her notes. "Today, we have a new student joining us. Lily Johnson." Lily felt every eye in the room turn to her, her face warming under the attention. Miss Harris's cold, penetrating gaze landed on her, scrutinizing. "Let's all welcome Lily to the academy," she declared, though her tone felt more like an order than a warm invitation. A few students muttered half-hearted greetings, and Lily felt the weight of their silent judgment descend upon her. The half-hearted greetings were brief, as students quickly looked away. Others exchanged unreadable glances, their expressions curious but far from welcoming. Lily forced a small smile, nodding slightly, trying to convince herself this was just the usual awkwardness of being new. After all, first days were always hard. But as Miss Harris began the lesson, Lily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, each movement seemingly scrutinized by unseen eyes. Determined to stay focused, she took meticulous notes, her head down, trying to blend in. Yet, Miss Harris's gaze seemed to linger on her, especially when posing questions to the class. Each time, Lily's heart raced, hoping she wouldn't be singled out. Finally, Miss Harris directed a question straight at her, catching her off guard. Frantically, Lily scanned her notes, feeling the weight of the class's attention, and managed a soft, hesitant answer. Miss Harris raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Lily, at this academy, we speak with confidence," she snapped. "If you want to keep up, you'll need to do better than that." The sharp words cut deep, and Lily felt herself shrink in her seat, her cheeks burning. A faint snicker came from a boy behind her, and she clenched her fists beneath the desk, willing herself to stay calm and not react. Miss Harris's tone held an edge that left Lily feeling as though she had already failed some unspoken test. The rest of the day blurred by in moments of sideways glances, murmured whispers, and a constant sense of being on display. When the final bell rang, signaling the end of the day, relief washed over her. She moved quickly to her locker, head down, avoiding eye contact. Just as she reached for her books, she felt a nudge from behind that sent her stumbling forward. "Oops," came a mocking voice behind her, feigning innocence. Lily turned and saw a group of girls nearby, their poorly concealed smirks barely hiding their stifled laughter. She wanted to say something, to stand up for herself, but the words caught in her throat. Swallowing her frustration, she gathered her books, holding back the tears that threatened to fall. As the hallways gradually emptied with students heading to their after-school activities, Lily felt drained and exhausted. She waited until the halls were nearly deserted before finally making her way outside. The fresh air was a relief, but as she walked home, her mind replayed every awkward moment, every whisper, every lingering stare. The memory weighed heavily on her, pressing down like an invisible burden on her chest. When she got home, her father greeted her with a warm smile, his eyes bright with anticipation. "So, how was your first day?" he asked, eager to hear about her experience. Lily forced a smile, determined to push aside her discomfort. "It was fine," she replied, doing her best to sound cheerful. She didn't want to worry him or let him think that all his hard work to get her into this school had been in vain. She nodded along as he spoke about the opportunities awaiting her and the bright future he envisioned. But as the evening wore on and she lay in bed, the weight of the day began to settle on her, and a knot tightened in her stomach. She wondered if coming here had been a mistake, if she truly belonged at Elite Academy. Her father had sacrificed so much to make this possible, and she couldn't bear the thought of disappointing him. She promised herself that she would try harder, that maybe things would improve if she just held on a little longer. Yet, as she drifted into a restless sleep, a small voice in her mind whispered that the challenges at the academy were only just beginning. The days at Elite Academy fell into a routine for Lily, but it was far from comfortable. Each morning, she entered through the grand entrance with her shoulders tense, bracing herself for the stares and whispers that had become her new normal. Although she focused on her studies, the constant judgment gnawed at her. Miss Harris, in particular, seemed to take a keen, almost unsettling interest in her progress. Miss Harris seemed to single her out constantly, her gaze lingering on Lily longer than on anyone else, often followed by a critical remark or a pointed question designed to expose even the smallest gaps in her understanding. It felt like the teacher was waiting for her to falter, eager to highlight any mistake for the whole class to see. Lily felt trapped, as if a spotlight had been cast on her, leaving no space for even the smallest error. One day, in biology class, Miss Harris abruptly directed a complex question about cell structures at her. Lily felt a jolt of panic as her mind went blank. She managed to piece together an answer, but Miss Harris's cold, disapproving stare made her heart sink. "Lily," she said with an edge to her voice, "if you want to succeed here, you need to put in the effort. This is basic material." The harsh words stung, and Lily felt the familiar flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck as a few students exchanged smirks and glances. She buried herself in her notes, hoping to escape the mocking whispers and stifled giggles that seemed to echo around her. Her interactions with classmates weren't any better. It began with accidental bumps in the hallway or muttered comments just loud enough for her to hear. A group of girls, led by a tall, smug girl named Sarah, seemed to make it their mission to make her life difficult. Every time they crossed paths, Sarah would either shove her slightly or mutter something under her breath. "Watch it, Johnson," Sarah sneered one day after deliberately bumping her shoulder, prompting laughter from her friends. Lily bit her lip, forcing herself to stay silent. It felt easier to apologize and walk away than to confront them, but each retreat left her feeling smaller. One afternoon, as she was gathering her books from her locker, she felt a hard shove from behind, sending her books tumbling to the ground. She turned quickly to see Sarah and her friends snickering as they walked away. Swallowing her frustration and anger, Lily bent down to pick up her books, trying to ignore the giggles echoing down the hallway. That evening, when her father asked how school was going, Lily forced a smile, assuring him that everything was fine, even though her heart ached under the weight of the truth. She didn't want him to worry or feel that his sacrifices had been in vain. But each night as she lay in bed, the day's events would replay in her mind, leaving her feeling increasingly trapped and alone each day. It became harder and harder for Lily to hold back tears. She'd hoped the bullying and cold treatment would fade with time, but it only seemed to grow worse. The breaking point came a few weeks later in biology class, during a practical lesson Miss Harris had arranged. The students were practicing how to treat small injuries in animals, using a model cat with a simulated wound. They were to learn how to clean the wound, shave the fur around it, and apply a bandage. Miss Harris called Lily to the front, instructing her to hold the model cat. As Lily stood there nervously, she felt her teacher's steely gaze fixed on her, scrutinizing every move. A few students whispered, glancing at her with smirks as if they knew something she didn't. "Lily," Miss Harris said, lifting a pair of clippers, "today we'll be practicing with these. Do you think you can handle it?" Lily nodded, fighting a surge of nervousness as she reached for the clippers. But Miss Harris held them back, studying Lily's face intently. "Discipline is essential in science," she continued, her voice icy. "If you can't follow directions, perhaps you aren't suited for this level of education." Before Lily could react, Miss Harris turned on the clippers, raised them to Lily's head, and, in front of the entire class, shaved a section of her hair. The loud buzz of the clippers filled the room as Lily felt the cold metal against her scalp. Gasps echoed around the room, followed by bursts of laughter. Some students looked on in shock, while others, like Sarah and her friends, covered their mouths, barely concealing their amusement. Lily's mind went blank, her hands gripping the edge of the table as she tried to process the humiliation. She wanted to scream, to push Miss Harris away, but her body remained frozen, paralyzed by the shock and shame. "Let this serve as a reminder," Miss Harris declared, turning off the clippers and stepping back with a satisfied smile. "In this academy, discipline and respect for authority are paramount." Lily's hands trembled as she touched the bare patch on her scalp where her hair had been shaved, while her classmates' laughter filled the room, echoing in her ears. She looked down, fighting back tears, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. The rest of the class passed in a haze. Lily felt numb, crushed under the weight of what had just happened, unable to escape the humiliation pressing down on her. The bell rang, signaling the end of the period, and Lily gathered her things with shaky hands, her mind in a fog. She hurried out of the room, avoiding the gazes of her classmates as she walked down the hallway. Her head felt light, the patch of missing hair a constant reminder of the humiliation she had just endured. She kept her head down, trying to shield it, but the whispers and giggles followed her every step of the way to her locker. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, struggling to hold herself together. That day, Lily didn't wait for the hallway to empty. She grabbed her books and made her way to the exit, ignoring the mocking smiles from a few students who tried to catch her eye. Her feet carried her home swiftly, the events of the day replaying relentlessly in her mind. Every word Miss Harris had spoken, every laugh and sneer from her classmates echoed painfully in her thoughts, and with each step, her heart felt like it was being crushed under the weight of it all. When she finally reached home, her father greeted her with his usual warm smile, but seeing him only made her heart ache. She forced a quick smile and muttered something about having a lot of homework before hurrying to her room and closing the door behind her. As she sat on her bed, the full weight of the day crashed down on her, and she finally allowed the tears to fall. She couldn't hide the pain anymore. The cruelty she faced at school was beginning to feel insurmountable. The trust she had once placed in the academy felt like a distant memory. For the first time, she wondered if she could keep this up, if she could continue facing each day alone, surrounded by the judgment and humiliation that had become her reality. As she lay there in the dark, her mind drifted to her father. She didn't want to disappoint him, didn't want to admit that she was struggling. But deep down, she knew she couldn't keep hiding the truth forever. If things didn't change, she would have to tell him. And as she drifted into an uneasy sleep, she made a silent promise to herself. If the cruelty at school continued, she wouldn't face it alone. She would finally let her father in, no matter how much it scared her. The days following the incident with Miss Harris's clippers felt like a never-ending nightmare. The patch of missing hair, now unevenly trimmed to match the rest, was a constant reminder of the humiliation she had endured. Each step through the school hallways felt like it exposed her further. The whispers, smirks, and quiet laughter of her classmates seemed to grow sharper, more mocking, as though they had found new fuel for their cruelty. The stares and barely concealed smiles were no longer just a nuisance, they were a constant reminder of how little she belonged at afternoon class. Lily stood at her locker, trying to breathe through the heavy weight of another long day. As she reached for her books, she felt the familiar shove from behind. This time it came from Sarah, her friends snickering as they walked by, deliberately making their presence known. "You know, you really don't belong here," Sarah's voice dripped with mockery as Lily tried to steady herself. Lily's grip tightened on her locker, the cold metal digging into her palms as she fought to keep it together. The cruel words from Sarah echoed in her mind. She felt like she was drowning in the humiliation, and she couldn't get out. As she stood there, frozen, she spotted the crumpled piece of paper that had slipped from her locker. With shaking hands, she unfolded it, only to find the same harsh message from before, *wrong school. Wrong girl *. Her heart sank. The simple, yet cutting words felt like an accusation that she could never escape. She shoved the paper into her pocket, taking a deep breath to push the tears away. But the damage was done. The hurt was sharp, and for the first time, she felt the weight of it becoming unbearable. Each day seemed to pile more pain onto her shoulders. The stares, the whispers, the laughter, it all began to blur into one overwhelming sensation of being out of place. When she got home, she put on the same smile for her father, but it felt like it was becoming harder to pretend everything was okay. She didn't want to disappoint him, didn't want him to know how much she was struggling. But the truth was undeniable. The isolation and cruelty had begun to take their toll. By the time night fell, she was alone with her thoughts. In the silence, the weight of everything pressed down on her. The loneliness felt suffocating, as though it was closing in around her, and she couldn't escape. The days turned into a blur of pain, and Lily began to wonder if she could keep going much longer. How much longer could she endure this? How much longer before she broke? In the quiet of her room, with the soft hum of the house around her, Lily made a choice. If this was going to continue, if things didn't change soon, she would tell her father the truth. She couldn't keep pretending she was okay. She couldn't keep hiding the pain. And as the weight of the day finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, Lily made a promise to herself. She wouldn't face this alone. She would find a way to speak up, to fight back against the cruelty, no matter how terrified she was. She wouldn't let the judgment of others define her any longer. Hurried out of the classroom, trying to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the school. The hallway felt endless as she walked toward the exit, the echoes of Sarah and her friends' laughter still ringing in her ears. Every step felt like a struggle, as though the walls themselves were closing in around her. The sting of their words, their mockery, was like a physical weight, pressing down on her chest, making it harder to breathe. She couldn't shake the feeling that every pair of eyes in the hall was watching her, judging her. She had hoped that, over time, things would get easier, that the cruelty would fade. But with each day, it only seemed to get worse. As she stepped outside, the cool air hit her face, but it did little to ease the burning in her chest. She wanted to run. Run far away from the judgment, the whispers, and the feeling of being completely out of place. But she had nowhere to go. No place that would offer her comfort. When she got home, her father was waiting for her at the door, his usual warm smile greeting her. But all she could do was force a smile back, barely able to meet his eyes. "How was your day?" he asked, clearly eager to hear about her experience. Lily swallowed hard, trying to push the pain aside. "It was fine," she said, her voice hollow. "Just a lot of homework." She could feel the lie settle between them, and though her father didn't seem to notice, Lily could hardly bear the weight of it. He was so proud of her for being at Elite Academy, and yet she felt like she was failing him. Every day she struggled to hold it together, to pretend that everything was fine, when inside, she was breaking. As the evening wore on, Lily retreated to her room, the silence of the house amplifying the turmoil inside her. She collapsed onto her bed, curling into herself, the weight of the day crashing down on her. She had hoped that things would get better, that the bullying would stop, but instead, it only seemed to get worse. Tears she had been holding back for weeks finally slipped free, and she let herself cry, letting the grief of everything she had been silently enduring pour out. She had no idea how much longer she could keep pretending that she was okay. Lily knew she couldn't keep up the facade much longer. She couldn't keep pretending to be strong when inside, she felt like she was falling apart. The thought of telling her father the truth terrified her. She didn't want to disappoint him, but the pain was becoming unbearable, and she couldn't hide it anymore. The next morning, she woke up with the same heavy feeling in her chest, but she made a decision. She was going to tell her father everything. The truth about the bullying, the cruelty, and how she was struggling to hold on. She couldn't keep pretending. With shaky hands, she made her way downstairs, her heart pounding as she approached her father. He was sitting at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper, and for the first time, Lily didn't feel like she was hiding something. "Dad," she began, her voice trembling. "I need to talk to you about something." Get her into elite academy. But the weight of everything, the bullying, the isolation, the relentless judgment, was becoming too much for her to carry alone. She couldn't keep pretending that she was okay when every day felt like a battle. Lily took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. The thought of speaking up, of exposing the truth, terrified her. She didn't want her father to think he had made a mistake, or worse, that she had failed him. But she knew deep down that keeping it all inside wasn't helping either. The longer she hid it, the harder it became to breathe. As the minutes stretched on, Lily found herself standing up from her bed. Her hands were trembling, but she felt a strange resolve building within her. She had spent so long hiding her pain, but maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to do it alone anymore. She slowly walked to the door, her heart pounding with every step. She had to do this. For herself, for her father, for the possibility of things getting better. She opened the door and stepped into the hallway, the weight of her decision heavy but necessary. When she reached the living room, her father was sitting at the kitchen table, reading through some paperwork. He looked up at her with a warm, kind smile, but she could see the faint hint of worry in his eyes, as if he could tell something was off. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling slightly, but the words feeling like a relief all at once. "I need to talk to you about something. Something important." Her father set his papers down, concern deepening on his face. He nodded, waiting for her to continue. Lily took a breath, her hands still shaking. "I've been struggling at school," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "The kids, and Miss Harris, they've been treating me terribly. It's been hard, really hard." Her father's expression softened instantly, his face filled with understanding, but also a deep sadness. He stood up, walking over to her and pulling her into a gentle hug. Lily let herself melt into his embrace, the comfort of his arms around her allowing her to finally release the tears she had been holding back for so long. "I'm so sorry, Lily," he whispered, stroking her hair. "I never wanted this for you. I thought this school would be a chance for you to grow, not to feel like this." Lily wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "I didn't want to tell you," she confessed, her voice small. "I didn't want to disappoint you. I didn't want you to think that your hard work was for nothing." Her father pulled back slightly, looking her in the eyes. "Lily, nothing you could ever say or do would make me think that. I just want you to be okay. And if this place is hurting you, we'll figure something else out. You don't have to face this alone. You don't have to be strong all the time." For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily felt a weight begin to lift. Her father didn't blame her. He wasn't angry. He was just there with open arms, ready to help her through this. She nodded, her heart feeling a little lighter. "I don't know what to do," she admitted softly. "But I don't want to keep pretending that everything's fine anymore." Her father gave her a reassuring smile. "We'll figure it out together, okay? You're not alone in this, Lily. We'll make it through, no matter what." And for the first time, Lily felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe things weren't going to be easy, but now that her father knew the truth, maybe they could start finding a way to make them better. Lily swallowed hard, gathering her thoughts. Her fingers trembled as she held onto her father's hand, the warmth of his touch grounding her. The weight of everything she had been carrying felt unbearable, but she knew she couldn't keep hiding it. "Dad," she began, her voice breaking, "I've been struggling at school. It's been really hard." Her father's expression tightened with concern, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean? Is someone bothering you?" he asked, his voice gentle but filled with worry. Lily nodded, her chest tightening. "It's not just one person," she whispered. "It's everyone. They make fun of me. They laugh at me. And Miss Harris, she shamed me in front of the whole class." Her father's face softened, but his eyes hardened slightly, a protective spark flickering there. "What do you mean, shamed you?" Lily took a deep breath, the memory of that day flooding back with painful clarity. "In biology, she shaved my hair off in front of everyone. She said I wasn't disciplined enough. But I couldn't stop it, and everyone laughed. It was like I was nothing to them." She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, her words tumbling out faster than she could stop them. "And the students, they all make fun of me. They push me. They shove me. They leave cruel notes. I've tried to ignore it, but it's getting worse every day. I don't know how much longer I can take it." Her father was silent for a long moment, his eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief, sadness, and something else, anger. He gently squeezed her hand, his voice tight. "Lily, I had no idea it was this bad. I should have seen it sooner." She shook her head, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to think I was weak or that I couldn't handle it. I didn't want you to regret sending me there. I know you've worked so hard to give me this opportunity, and I didn't want to disappoint you." Her father's face softened as he lifted her chin, making her look at him. "You are not weak, Lily," he said firmly. "You've been incredibly strong to keep all of this inside for so long, but you don't have to carry it alone anymore. I'm so proud of you for telling me. I promise you we'll fix this. I won't let anyone treat you this way. We'll make sure you're safe." Lily's chest tightened as she let out a shuddering breath, a mixture of relief and fear flooding through her. "But what if they won't listen? What if I can't fix it?" Her father shook his head, pulling her into a hug. "We'll figure it out together, Lily. I'll talk to the school. We'll get to the bottom of this. I'll make sure you're treated with the respect you deserve." Lily clung to him, letting the tears fall freely now. She felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel completely alone. "Dad, thank you," she whispered through her sobs. "Anything for you, sweetheart," he replied softly, his voice filled with love and determination. "We'll make this right." Her father's voice, filled with a strength she hadn't realized she needed so desperately, gave her a sense of peace she hadn't known in weeks. "I don't want you carrying this burden anymore, Lily," he continued, his tone firm but tender. "We'll take care of this together. I promise you, no one will treat you this way again." Lily nodded, a shaky breath escaping her. I don't know how to go back to school, Dad. It feels like everyone's already made up their minds about me." Her father's eyes softened, but there was a fire there now, an unwavering determination. "We'll make them see you for who you truly are. You're strong, smart, and deserving of respect, and I'll make sure the school knows that." Lily swallowed, her throat tight. She didn't know how it would all unfold, but for the first time, she didn't feel like she was standing alone. "I'm scared, Dad," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I know, sweetheart. But you won't be scared anymore," he reassured her. "I'll talk to the school. We'll figure this out. And you don't have to face any of this alone." The comfort in his words settled around her like a warm blanket. Her father had always been her safe place, but now he was ready to fight for her in a way that gave her the courage to start facing her own battles. "I love you, Dad," she whispered, the words thick with emotion. "I love you too, more than anything," he replied softly, kissing her forehead gently. "And I'm proud of you. For everything you've endured, for being brave enough to tell me the truth." She buried her face in his chest, letting the tears flow freely, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of helplessness. They were tears of release, of finally knowing she wouldn't face this alone. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, Lily felt a glimmer of hope. With her father by her side, she would find the strength to stand up to the cruelty and to rebuild her confidence, step by painful step. Time. As she slept, a sense of calm wrapped around her like a protective shield. The weight of the past weeks, of the cruelty, the humiliation, the isolation, didn't disappear, but it felt more bearable now, knowing that her father was there, ready to fight for her. The next morning, Lily woke with a mixture of anxiety and hope. The anxiety was still there, gnawing at her gut, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of empowerment. She wasn't alone anymore. Her father's words echoed in her mind as she got ready for school. "I'm going to fight for you, Lily." They were like a steady flame in the back of her mind, guiding her through the dread of what lay ahead. At breakfast, her father smiled at her from across the table, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the quiet determination in his eyes. She knew he was preparing himself for what he would face today, what they would face together. He didn't say much, but the unspoken understanding between them was enough. As she left for school, he walked her to the door, placing a hand on her shoulder and giving it a reassuring squeeze. "We'll get through this, Lily. he said softly. "Just remember, you're not alone. I'm with you every step of the way." Lily nodded, her throat tight but her heart swelling with a new sense of courage. "Thanks, Dad." As she walked through the school gates, the familiar sense of dread threatened to rise again, but she took a deep breath, holding her head high. Today was different. Today, she had someone who would stand beside her, who would make sure she was heard. And that made all the difference. Cold and clipped. "I believe you've misunderstood the situation. My actions were part of a disciplinary measure. It was intended to teach Lily a lesson about responsibility, not to humiliate her." Lily's father's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward, his voice unwavering. "A lesson? You call what you did a lesson? Shaving my daughter's hair in front of her peers, humiliating her in front of the entire class. How is that supposed to teach responsibility? That was an abuse of your authority, and you have no right to treat any student like that." Miss Harris's cheeks flushed with a hint of defensiveness, but she remained silent for a moment. The principal, Mr. Townend, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the conversation. "Let's all take a step back here. I understand the situation is upsetting, but we need to handle this calmly." Lily's father wasn't having it. "Calm? You want calm?" His voice rose slightly. "How can you expect us to be calm when my daughter has been tormented day after day? You're supposed to protect her, not allow this kind of abuse to happen under your watch." Lily sat beside her father, feeling a mix of anxiety and relief. Her father's anger was a force to be reckoned with, but it was the first time in weeks that she felt a spark of hope. He was fighting for her, fighting in a way she never could on her own. Miss Harris shifted in her seat, her face reddening, but she still refused to acknowledge the depth of her wrongdoing. "I've been a teacher for years, Mr. Johnson. I've had to discipline students before, and this is how things are done in this academy." Lily could feel the tension building in the room, the air thick with unspoken resentment. Her father's grip on her hand tightened. "This isn't about what you've done before, Miss Harris. This is about what's happened to my daughter, and I won't stand by while you justify your actions. The only thing you've taught her is that there's no place for her here, and I won't allow that to continue." The principal sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "I understand your frustration, Mr. Johnson. I'll look into this matter thoroughly. We can't have students feeling unsafe or humiliated at this school. Rest assured, we'll investigate what's happened and take appropriate action." Lily's father nodded but didn't look satisfied. "I don't want your investigation, Mr. Townend. I want real action. I want to know what you're going to do about Miss Harris and how you're going to make sure something like this never happens again." The principal's eyes flickered nervously to Miss Harris, who was now looking down at the table, her face tight. "I'll speak with Miss Harris after this meeting. We'll make sure this gets handled appropriately." Lily's father didn't back down. "I don't want to hear that. I want to know that there will be consequences, that she will understand the gravity of what she's done, and that my daughter won't have to go through this any longer." The tension in the room was palpable, but finally, Mr. Townend nodded reluctantly. "We'll take immediate steps to address this. I'll ensure there is a full review of Miss Harris's actions, and we will be in touch with you soon about the outcome." Lily's father stood up, his voice calm but resolute. "I expect nothing less." As they walked out of the conference room, Lily felt a mixture of relief and nervous anticipation. Her father had done everything he could, but there was still a part of her that wondered if anything would really change. Would Miss Harris face consequences? Would her classmates stop tormenting her? Or was this just the beginning of more battles to come? Her father turned to her, his expression softening. "I know that wasn't easy, sweetheart, but you don't have to face this alone anymore. We'll make sure this gets fixed." Lily nodded, feeling the weight of the past weeks lifting just a little. It wasn't over, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had a chance. Lily's father's voice didn't waver as he continued, his tone measured but firm. "I don't care how challenging the environment is. No student, especially my daughter, should be subjected to that kind of treatment. You're supposed to be her teacher, Miss Harris. Your job is to support her, not break her down." Miss Harris's expression was icy, her lips pressed tightly together as though trying to suppress her own growing frustration. "Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice clipped and controlled, I have made every effort to ensure Lily's success. The challenges she faces are her own, and I'm simply doing my job by holding her accountable. This school isn't for everyone. Lily felt a knot form in her stomach at Miss Harris's words. Every part of her wanted to shout, to tell the teacher how much pain she had caused, but her father's steady presence beside her was a reminder to stay composed. Her father, however, wasn't holding back. His voice cut through the tension like a knife. You don't get to decide who's suited for this school, Miss Harris. And no one should have to endure what Lily has endured just to meet your standards. Your actions have consequences, whether you want to admit it or not. The room fell into an uneasy silence, and even Mr. Townsend, who had been trying to mediate, appeared at a loss for words. His gaze flickered between the two of them, clearly unsure of how to proceed. Finally, Miss Harris spoke again, her tone less confident. I've followed the rules, Mr. Johnson. The incident you're referring to was part of an attempt to discipline Lily. She made a mistake, and I took action as I see fit. That's not discipline, that's cruelty, Lily's father shot back without missing a beat. Shaving her hair in front of everyone? That's not a lesson in responsibility, that's public humiliation. And as for the bullying she's endured since then, where have you been? You allowed it to happen, and you did nothing. Lily's hands tightened in her lap, her nails digging into her palms as she fought to hold back the tears threatening to surface. But her father was there, standing firm for her, and for the first time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, something would change. Mr. Townsend, looking more uncomfortable than ever, turned toward Miss Harris. Perhaps it's best if we take a break from this discussion and review the situation with all parties involved. We'll investigate further and meet again. Lily's father stood tall, his eyes never leaving Miss Harris. I expect a real investigation, not just some half-hearted apology. If there's even the slightest chance my daughter is being mistreated here, I will take action. As they left the room, Lily felt a strange sense of relief. Her father had fought for her, and although Miss Harris was still unrepentant, Lily now had hope that things could change. That she wouldn't have to face the darkness alone anymore. Lily tried to push it out of her mind, focusing on the small victories, the days where she didn't feel like a target, the moments when she could walk through the hallways without hearing the whispers or feeling the weight of Sarah's and the others' judgment. But the subtle shifts in Miss Harris's behavior, though less cruel, were still there, and it made Lily wonder whether anything would ever truly change. She'd hoped that the meeting would spark some real shift in the atmosphere at school, but the reality was that things didn't change overnight. Despite her father's promises, the environment at the academy still felt harsh, and the cruelty, though quieter, lingered like a shadow. Her father's vigilance didn't falter. Each morning he reminded her that he was there to protect her, offering words of encouragement as he dropped her off at school. His presence was a constant reminder that she wasn't alone, but deep down, she still feared that nothing could change the deep-seated culture of exclusion that had taken root at the school. One afternoon, as she sat in the cafeteria, trying to ignore the low murmurs from the other students, Sarah and her friends walked by, and Lily could feel their eyes on her. She could almost hear the snickers they shared behind her back, but this time, something inside her shifted. For the first time, she didn't feel the urge to shrink or look away. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly and continued eating, determined not to let them see how much their cruelty still stung. The next week, there was another meeting, this time with the principal and Miss Harris, where Lily's father once again made it clear that if the behavior continued, they would have no choice but to take further action. Miss Harris didn't apologize, but Lily saw a slight shift in her, an unwillingness to meet her eyes directly, a subtle change in the way she spoke to Lily in class. It wasn't perfect. The bullying didn't disappear completely, and there were still difficult days. But Lily no longer felt like she was entirely powerless in the face of it all. With her father's support and the small steps that were being made toward holding her tormentors accountable, Lily began to believe that things could eventually get better, that maybe, in time, she would find a way to not just survive, but thrive. Though the road ahead was still long, Lily found the strength to keep going, and the belief that change, however slow, was possible. That arm around her shoulders, offering her a rare, warm smile. "We did it, Lily," he said softly, his voice filled with pride. "You're not alone anymore. No one should have to face this kind of treatment." Lily looked up at him, feeling a mixture of relief and gratitude. She hadn't realized just how much she'd been carrying until now, the constant tension, the fear, the humiliation. But now, with Miss Harris suspended and the school finally taking action, she could breathe a little easier. It wasn't over, but it was a step in the right direction. As they walked to the car, Lily noticed a few students who had previously taunted her watching from a distance. She wasn't sure if they felt regret or simply discomfort, but either way, she held her head higher than she had in weeks. The support her father had shown, and the strength she had found in standing up for herself, made her realize that she could face whatever came next. The battle had been long and grueling, but as the weeks went on, things at the school slowly began to change. Miss Harris's absence left a void that was filled with a mix of uncertainty and hope. The school administration, now under pressure, started to put more effort into fostering a safer environment, and the whispers in the hallways grew quieter. Sarah and her friends continued to make their snide remarks, but they could no longer hide behind the teacher's authority, and Lily wasn't afraid to stand her ground. She had learned something valuable through it all, that her pain wasn't hers alone, and that sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is reach out for help. With her father by her side, Lily realized she was not just a victim of her circumstances, she was a survivor, and in time, she would thrive. Lily looked up in surprise, unsure of how to respond. She had never expected Emma, of all people, to reach out. Emma's shy, reserved nature had always kept her in the background, not someone who would have spoken up in support before. "Thanks, Emma," Lily said softly, her voice a little shaky as she tried to process the unexpected kindness. She had always been so focused on surviving the cruelty around her that she hadn't considered the impact it might have had on others who witnessed it. Emma seemed to be searching for the right words. "I never saw what was going on," she continued, her voice quiet, almost apologetic. "I just didn't want to get involved. I should have said something. I'm sorry." Lily felt a wave of emotions flood her chest, a mix of gratitude, confusion, and a sense of validation. To hear someone acknowledge her suffering, someone who hadn't been directly involved, was different than the empty words from the administration. It made her feel seen. "You don't have to apologize," Lily replied, shaking her head. "It's not your fault." Emma nodded, but Lily could see the sincerity in her eyes. "I just wanted to make sure you knew. Things shouldn't have gone the way they did." Lily smiled faintly, her heart feeling lighter. "I appreciate that, Emma." With a final, small smile, Emma left, disappearing down the hallway, but the impact of her words lingered. It was the first time in a long while that Lily had felt something like hope stir in her chest. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. Even if the road ahead was still uncertain, the support she had now, however small, felt like a lifeline. As Lily continued through the rest of the day, she noticed other subtle changes. Some students who had once kept their distance now greeted her with polite nods. The whispers in the hallways weren't gone, but they had lost the biting edge they once had. The transformation wasn't immediate, but Lily had learned that real change took time, and that sometimes, even the smallest gestures could spark something bigger. She still wasn't entirely free from the shadows of her past, but each step forward made them seem less oppressive. And with her father's promise to stand by her, she knew she could face whatever came next. Of authority and sincerity. "Good morning, students," he began. "As many of you know, our school has recently implemented new policies to address bullying and discrimination. We are committed to fostering a safe and supportive environment for all our students. I want to remind everyone that this is a community, and each of us is responsible for making sure it is a place where everyone can thrive without fear." Lily sat up straighter, the words resonating with her more deeply than she could have imagined. She had spent so long feeling isolated, afraid that no one would ever care enough to change the toxic environment she had endured. But now, hearing the principal's words, she felt a sense of validation, as if the school was truly beginning to acknowledge the importance of every student's well-being. "Today," Mr. Townsend continued, "we are holding an assembly where we will address the importance of kindness, respect, and empathy. I encourage each of you to take part in this conversation. It's not just about following rules, it's about creating a culture where every individual is treated with dignity." Lily's heart beat faster as she glanced around the classroom. She noticed a few of her classmates, the ones who had once been part of the group that teased her, now paying attention, their faces serious and reflective. The change was slow, but it was real. And that was all she could ask for. The following day, the assembly took place. The entire student body gathered in the auditorium, where various speakers, including Mr. Townsend and a few of the teachers, shared their thoughts on the importance of inclusion. They spoke about the effects of bullying, not just on the victim but on the entire school community, and stressed the responsibility everyone shared in building a more supportive environment. Lily sat among her peers, her stomach fluttering nervously. She was still adjusting to being seen, to no longer being the quiet, invisible girl in the back of the room. As the speakers talked, she felt a flicker of hope for the future. She no longer had to shrink away from the eyes of her classmates. Slowly, piece by piece, she was starting to rebuild herself. After the assembly, she walked through the hallways with her head a little higher, noticing the changes in the students around her. Sarah and her friends kept their distance, and though Sarah's eyes occasionally lingered on her, the sharp edge of hostility was gone. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of discomfort, times when Lily would catch whispers or a stray glance. But the fear, the crippling sense of isolation, was slowly dissipating. As Lily reached her locker, she found Emma waiting for her again. This time, Emma gave her a genuine smile, her posture more relaxed. "Hey," she said, her voice warm. "I'm glad things are getting better for you." Lily smiled back, feeling a sense of connection she hadn't known she needed. "Me too, thanks to you." Emma's smile widened, and for the first time, Lily felt like she truly belonged. The walls around her heart, built so high over the years, were slowly beginning to crumble. With each new gesture, each change in her surroundings, she felt herself becoming stronger. The journey wasn't over, but with each step, she was walking toward a new beginning, one where she was no longer defined by the cruelty of the past. Voice soft, "I just wanted to say, I'm really proud of you. I know it hasn't been easy, but you're handling all of this with so much strength." Lily blinked, surprised by the sincerity in Emma's words. She had always kept her distance from Emma before, and to hear such genuine praise felt almost surreal. It was as if the walls that had kept her isolated were finally starting to come down, brick by brick. "Thanks, Emma," Lily replied, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "It means a lot to me." The conversation continued, and Lily felt a warmth in her chest. It wasn't just Emma. There was an openness in the group now, a sense that maybe things were changing for the better. Even the other students at the table, once strangers or casual acquaintances, seemed more approachable, less guarded. There was a sense of inclusion, of being seen and heard, that Lily had never experienced at this school before. As the days passed, those subtle changes kept growing. The students who had once ignored her or treated her like an outsider now made an effort to smile at her, to engage in conversation, and to include her in group activities. She even started noticing that some of the students who had been part of Sarah's circle, those who had been silent bystanders to the bullying, now seemed to question their own behavior. Lily could sense the shift in the atmosphere, an unspoken understanding that things had to change, and a collective desire to make that happen. Even Sarah, who had once been so sure of her power to make Lily feel small, was noticeably quieter. Her smirks had faded into distant, uncertain glances. It wasn't that Sarah had apologized, she hadn't, but the absence of hostility spoke volumes. One afternoon, after a particularly meaningful workshop on empathy, Lily found herself walking through the hallways feeling lighter. The tension that had always followed her, the weight of the stairs, had almost entirely dissipated. She no longer feared the next cruel word or the next malicious comment. Instead, she felt the presence of a community slowly but surely coming together. As she walked past a group of students, one of them, a girl from her math class, gave her a brief but genuine smile. It was the kind of smile that said, "I see you and I respect you," and it made Lily's heart swell with a sense of belonging that she had never thought was possible. Lily knew that the change wouldn't happen overnight, that the road ahead would still have its challenges, but in that moment, she understood something important. The victory she had fought for wasn't just about what had been accomplished in the past few weeks. It was about her growth, her resilience, and her ability to stand tall even when the world had tried to knock her down. And as she walked down the hallway, a soft smile on her face, she realized that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving, and for the first time in a long time, she believed in her place at the academy. The importance of listening and being there when it matters most. You've shown me the power of persistence, of not giving up when things get tough. Lily smiled up at him, her heart full. She had always looked up to her father, but now she felt a deeper connection to him. A shared understanding of strength and determination. "Thanks, Dad," she said quietly, her voice full of emotion. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." He placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip warm and reassuring. "You're stronger than you know, Lily. I'm just proud to have been part of this journey with you." As they stepped inside their home, the weight of the past seemed to lift off her shoulders. The house felt different now, lighter, filled with a sense of hope and possibility that had been absent before. For the first time in a long time, Lily felt like she was truly home. The days ahead would no doubt bring new challenges, but Lily was no longer afraid. With the lessons she had learned, the support of her father, and the newfound strength she carried within herself, she knew she could face whatever came her way. She had found her voice, and she was determined to keep speaking out, not just for herself but for anyone who needed to be heard. Community and inclusivity. The change in atmosphere was palpable, and Lily felt a sense of pride in the small but significant role she had played in making it happen. Students no longer viewed her with suspicion or cruelty. Instead, they saw her as just another student, a peer worthy of respect. It was a humbling realization, one that made her heart swell with gratitude. As the days passed, Lily continued to find her place at the academy, not as the outsider she once was, but as someone who belonged. Her confidence grew, not just in her academic abilities, but in her relationships with others. She formed genuine friendships with classmates like Emma, who had apologized for her previous indifference, and others who had once stood on the sidelines but were now eager to connect. During one of the lunchtime conversations, Emma leaned in and smiled at Lily. "I think you really changed this school, you know," she said, her voice soft but filled with sincerity. "You showed us all what standing up for yourself looks like." Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I didn't do it alone," she replied, her voice filled with humility. "It took a lot of people standing together. But I'm glad it made a difference." As she sat back and watched the students around her laughing and talking with each other, Lily realized that while the scars of her past might never fully disappear, they no longer defined her. She had learned to turn her pain into strength, to fight for what was right, and most importantly, she had learned that she was worthy of kindness and respect. In the weeks that followed, the school continued to foster a more inclusive environment. Teachers made a point of checking in with students, encouraging open dialogue, and addressing any lingering issues before they could escalate. The administration's commitment to change was clear, and the students seemed to be following suit, embracing the opportunity to be better, to do better. Lily knew that not everything was perfect, that there would always be challenges, and that some people might never fully change. But she had come to realize that she couldn't control how others acted. What she could control was her response, her strength, and her belief in the possibility of change. And for the first time in a long time, she was at peace with that. With her father's unwavering support, the school's new policies, and the strength she had found within herself, Lily was ready to face whatever came next, confident that no matter what, she was no longer alone and sincere. "I've been hearing great things about the initiative you've joined. You've really made an impact, and I'm proud of the work you're doing here." Lily felt a rush of warmth at his words, but she remained calm, trying to hide the flutter of nervousness in her chest. "Thank you, Mr. Townsend," she replied softly, her voice steady despite the butterflies. "It feels good to be part of something bigger than myself." Mr. Townsend nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. "You've shown a lot of courage, Lily. And what's more, you've inspired others. The way you've shared your story, how you've taken ownership of your experiences, it's creating a ripple effect across the school. You're a leader in this, and I want you to know that the school supports you." Lily's eyes widened in surprise. She had never considered herself a leader, but hearing Mr. Townsend say it out loud made her feel like she truly had a purpose beyond just surviving the day-to-day struggles. She had become a part of something meaningful, a force for change in a place that had once felt so isolating. I just want others to know they're not alone, she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. If sharing my story can help even one person, then it's worth it. Mr. Townsend smiled, leaning forward slightly. And you've already helped more than one person, Lily. You've created a safe space where people can find understanding and support. That's invaluable. Lily felt a sense of pride swell inside her as Mr. Townsend continued. I'm hoping to recognize students like you who are making a difference in the school. You're shaping the culture here in a positive way, and I want you to know that we appreciate all your hard work. His words settled over her like a warm blanket, wrapping her in validation and encouragement. She had come so far, and though there was still work to be done, she could feel the weight of her past experiences lifting with every step she took toward the future. As she left Mr. Townsend's office, a quiet confidence enveloped her. She walked down the hallway with her head held high, knowing that the change she had helped create was real and that she was a part of something bigger than herself, something that could continue to grow and impact others long after she graduated. For the first time, Lily felt truly at peace with who she was and what she had accomplished. She had found her strength, her voice, and her place. And with that, she was ready to face the future, knowing she was never truly alone. At the window at the setting sun, she felt a quiet sense of contentment settle in her heart. The road to get here had been hard, filled with moments of doubt and pain, but it had also been a journey of growth, courage, and transformation. She had faced the darkness, but now, standing in the light, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. Her father looked over at her, his smile full of love and pride. You've shown me what it really means to fight for what's right, to never give up no matter how tough things get, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. You've taught me more than I could ever teach you. Lily looked at her father, her heart full of gratitude. We've taught each other, she replied, her voice thick with the bond they shared. I couldn't have done it without you. That evening, as they sat together, Lily felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had found her strength, her purpose, and the support of those who truly cared about her. Her journey wasn't over, but she was no longer afraid. She was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing she had the power to shape her own future. And as the days went by, the changes at the academy continued. The new policies, the initiatives, and the lessons of respect and kindness were taking root in the hearts of the students and staff. The school was becoming a better place, and Lily knew she had played a part in that transformation. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about creating a space where everyone could feel seen, heard, and valued. As she moved forward, she knew that no matter where life took her, she would always have the courage to stand up for what was right and the strength to fight for those who needed her. Because now, she truly believed in herself, and in the power of change. As Lily gazed out the window, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the evening sky, she felt a deep sense of peace wash over her. She was ready to embrace the future, confident that whatever came her way, she was strong enough to handle it. The journey had been long, filled with pain and hardship, but through it all, she had discovered a resilience she never knew she had. And with her father's unwavering support, she knew she would never have to face the darkness alone. Together, they had changed more than just a school. They had taken a stand against prejudice, showing everyone the power of resilience and the importance of speaking up for what's right. As they sat together, sharing stories and laughter, Lily knew that her journey was just beginning. She had faced her fears, fought for her place, and found the strength to create a brighter future, not only for herself but for everyone who would walk those hallways after her. With her father by her side, she was ready to face whatever the future held. As spring arrived, Lily's life at school began to change. The place that once felt isolating was now somewhere she could feel respected, heard, and supported. With her father's encouragement and her own resilience, Lily found new confidence and strength to face the future, knowing her story mattered. If Lily's story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know what inspires you and tell us where you're watching from.